It's,
Right. How are you? I guess it's pretty late where you are, is it?
it's 10 p.m.
Right.
Yeah.
So how have you been? Still good?
Yeah, good. Just more of the same, more it just feels like there's stuff clearing out. That's how it feels.
Yeah.
Still these energy kicks, which have been quite intense today, quite a lot of them today. Um, and it's just really subtle noticing that there's things that are a bit different. Like I was just talking to my son, and I can't even describe it, but it's like there's just less judgment. Like it's not even that. It's just less. It's just fresh. It's just more fresh.
Mm.
Um, and it's almost like noticing the absence of um, frustration, absence of just old patterns, I suppose. Yeah, and I don't know, the whole thing's just quiet. It's just really
Yeah,
quiet. Yeah.
I get it. I'm excited for you. Oh,
Mm,
it's in Penilla's vernacular, you've taken off a whole lot of sticky notes, and
yeah.
you're much more exposed to what is actual. Yeah. I went to a POK meeting last night and just observed, and it was Todd and Penilla talking, and she said something that, well, I kind of knew, but she put it in a way that made it a lot of sense, and that was that essentially we've got our nervous system gets programmed way before we're verbal or we've got any memory, whatever, and we spend a lifetime, these are my words, we spend a lifetime looking for meaning for that, and we add stories to that. And what we're doing here is the reverse, is we're just removing the stories, the attachment of the stories to those nervous responses. And once we get to see the nervous responses without the stories, they can get reprogrammed. And that's what's happening. I loved it. It was a really good way to describe it. Yeah. So that separation of the stories to the nervous response, the programmed nervous response, is the meaning we give the stories. It's not the stories themselves, it's the meaning we give them. And when we recognize that and lose that, we're just left with those responses. And then because they were programmed when we were really young, they get reprogrammed because we now see them from an adult perspective. And now see we don't need to get anxious when somebody talks loudly or whatever. Yeah, great. I love it.
Yeah. 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 And I think I mentioned this yesterday or whenever it was yesterday, a few days ago. This just it's like listening with or like I don't know, it's like listening with the nervous system. It's almost like that. And I know you talk a lot about the response bunny, which makes a lot of sense to me. We're just responding all the time. Response, response. But there's something that I don't know, I just notice it more and more.
Hmm.
The and it's the layer of speech and language is this is way deeper than that. It's just
Yeah,
something
absolutely. Yeah.
I
Yeah.
can't even.
All of those spontaneous responses are pre-verbal. And so even though now they got conditioned pre-verbally, but right now they exist beneath language, beneath that layer of language, which is where the meaning is and the stories are. Now they're in that layer of language. So when they get disconnected, you're it's going to be much clearer what's there, and it's clear that it's just sensation.
Yeah, yeah. And the implications of starting to see that more and more, because intellectually I know this, but as I'm interacting with people, to know that that's the same, it's just the same on both sides.
Well, yeah,
You see,
absolutely, yeah,
yeah, you see the superficial layer of the language. Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
And as you recognise that, it's kind of weird because you recognise it in yourself, you then recognise it in them, and which kind of boomerangs back to yourself, so that end up with compassion for everybody involved. You know,
yeah,
it's a helpless situation that's just arising. Yeah,
yeah,
and that softening that comes with that is just that also disconnects a whole lot
yes,
of that. Those old stories, we lose the guilt, we lose the shame, we lose the judgment. Yeah,
yeah.
it's beautiful, isn't it?
Yeah, and just that self-compassion, that's just got stronger and stronger. That it every day seems to be,
More exposed.
yeah, you just see how much I want to say self-sabotage, but that's not really what I mean, but innocently,
Yeah, I get what you mean. Yeah,
um,
it seems at a level, it seems self-induced,
yes,
but
yes,
that's up there at that superficial level again. Yeah.
yes.
And I
Yeah, I
wanted to
saw that
say,
today. Mm,
yeah,
sorry.
go. That's all right. No, I was just thinking when that compassion for self gets to a certain level, it spills out and into everything and everybody, and it's just softens and it ceases to be compassion. It's just love.
Yeah,
I know this
yeah,
takes us into that woo-woo area a little bit, but it is. It's a feeling of just a wave of love that just spreads out. And in the beginning, it seems to come from you, but after a while, it will just be something you swim through all the time.
mm, yeah. And there's something about that more and more is as if it's the last day, like as if today was the last day. How would I, oh, how do I say that? That and this is mine just trying to make a story, but that's how it feels. It's like there's no future to protect. There's
Hmm.
no person or future events or anything to
Yep.
Yeah.
That's also a pretty magical place. That that takes us into the eternity that this moment is. You know, there's no past or future, but this moment spreads out to everything and everywhere. It seems funny talking like this is just, it's weird. People will just think you're straight jacket material. But yeah.
Well, that's why I come here.
Yeah, yeah.
Somebody understands. Yeah. Thank you.
Oh,
Yeah, all
thank
good.
you. Yeah. And when I hear you, it just brings alive that experience for me. It's just so beautiful. Thank you. So what did you think of that, Dennis?
I actually kind of missed the start of Louisa's, so I didn't really get the gist of the overall story, so I wouldn't be best placed to comment on it.
I imagine you only need to pick up the last word to get the feel of it.
I think it's important that if Louise got something out of it, that's the main thing.
It's all right. We were talking woo-woo stuff.
I actually don't even remember what I said. I was just in
Yeah,
it.
it's fine.
Thank you, Louise. I can come clean too then. I don't remember either. And my sense was you were in a good place and things were going reasonably well. So that was the sense of it anyway.
So how's things been for you after our last meeting? You seem to be a shift happening for you.
So I'm still doing kind of a, what do I call it? I'm still probably for an hour and a half in a day. Not a lot. I'm not doing a lot of it, but particularly before I go to bed or after I wake up in the morning, I'm just feeling into sensations or contractions in the body or wherever there's a calling to go to. And, you know, say put my attention there, but feeling into the, if there's a contraction, if there's an emotion, if there's a sensation, um, and just allowing that to be or become that in a sense. And it's like it's a pane of glass with layers or laminates, and then a layer will just dissolve off. It could be a memory, an emotion, a sensation, and just becoming that. And so instead of being agitated and resisting an agitation and maybe doing something else like we all do, get on our phone or have a drink or whatever people do to distract themselves, I'm just going into that feeling, sensation, emotion, and I'm just allowing it to kind of evaporate or peel off and just staying with it. And that's been the practice for the last while. So kind of doing one thing and one thing only. And I'm noticing that things in the outward world that affect me, I feel like more human. I feel like if something is upsetting me, I feel the upset, I feel the anger, I feel the emotion. I'm kind of, I'm annoyed, I'm angry, I'm upset about that. And I can viscerally feel it moving in the body and it feels more embodied and alive. And in a way, that's nice instead of just being a one trick pony where you, at some point you just go, I'm stressed or whatever you might say or say nothing. So that's a kind of a small side effect of it, I think. So I'm just going to keep doing that for the next while and see if it substantially changes anything. But no, no
Yeah,
significant shifts or knowings or anything like that. There's nothing.
yeah. Good one. All right. Don't. Yeah. So I want to repeat what I said before you arrived. That is really relevant to what's happening for you. So it puts it's a story about what's going on for you, right? I picked this up listening to Penilla and Todd last night at the POK meeting, and she was saying that I, I, I really need to do some research and memorize things to get it more accurately. But essentially, she said it's the first trimester where our brain is developing, and we are conditioned to bodily responses, nervous system responses that happens in that. So this is pre-verbal and certainly pre-memory, right? But our body remembers this conditioning, and that conditioning can be for a whole lot of reasons. She was even saying that if your mother is a intense athlete, that there's a good chance that you're going to be born with insufficient, I think she said magnesium or potassium or something, and the consequence is that you're going to be more prone to whatever. And if your mother was diabetic, there's a good chance that your genes are going to reflect that. All these things that happen, but there's also the conditioning from the environment, right? When you're first born, or before you're born, but particularly when you're first born. So it's that old story that if you're hungry and you're crying and your mother, who's a very loving mother, is in the lounge room and the TV's on and she doesn't hear you crying, for you it becomes a survival situation. These are my words, not hers. But essentially, you suffer trauma, and that conditions your nervous system, and so on. And so what we've got throughout our life is we've got these these let's say biological responses to conditions, that we get triggered into these old things, but as we grow we've developed stories to explain them, and then we learn ways to avoid them, right, like what you're saying, and the consequence is that we lose touch with the biological aspect of it, because it's covered up with stories, meaning that we give it. Now, there's the stories, and then there's the meaning that we give the stories, right? Which is often the judgment we put on it. That means that I am that whatever
Mm.
dot dot dot. So those things. So when we learn to dissociate from the stories, or not from the stories, that they're almost irrelevant, from the meaning we give the stories, right, then we're exposed to the raw biological response, the sensation. And when we can notice that without the stories, something happens. It transforms, because they were conditioned way back when, and now we've got an adult perspective on them, and they're just sensations. And so by losing the story, we become exposed to the original thing, and it gets transformed, and we lose it. Now, it doesn't mean that they go away completely necessarily, but the meaning that we used to put to it, which is the judgment about it, doesn't happen anymore. And so consequently, they become pretty mild compared to what they were when we added the story, and the meaning of the story, which induced suffering, which induced a whole lot of extra stuff. And that's why we call it clarity or freedom, or however you want to describe it. It's a
Yeah,
great explanation. I love it. Yeah.
it rings true. Yeah, it's funny when you said something there. It reminded me of that. The original sin, the original mistake that humans made. The original sin is the separation from the body. Like, it feels like you're coming home to the body a little bit more. The weekend I was down the country and we went for a walk in the forest for about an hour, and it just felt so good to be physically exercising and tired and the blood pumping, and I really felt like the body was feeling really good, which I noticed was unusual. Feeling more embodied is what I'd say.
Beautiful. Yes.
And sitting around with those core emotions and just being more aware of when I'm frustrated, saying I'm frustrated or I'm upset. That wouldn't be one I'd have said a lot, but I'm saying I'm upset now about that. Now I'm upset about that. That's annoying. Or just feeding into kind of, I noticed when I was walking, the legs felt free, the arms felt free, but the back and the upper body and the neck felt very sort of tight and restricted. And just noticing that and kind of putting my attention there and just seeing what comes up. And so it's back to that practice of just noticing in the body what's there.
Yep. Yep.
In the space, in the world, in the moment, what's, is there an
Yep.
issue, is there a contraction, is there a tightness, and going to it and just you know seeing what's actually there as opposed to telling a story around it so I don't have to look.
Yep. Well, then there's the how can I put it? The quality of your noticing. It becomes the next thing to look at. And so, if you can describe it, it's 95% the image that your brain's created. The noticing needs to be way more subtle, way deeper than anything you can describe. And so if you're saying, "Oh, that feels tight," that's a label, and that's 5% in towards what's actually going on. The other 95% is obscured by your image of what tight is, or what heavy is, or whatever label you want to put on it. And so the actual experience, the quality of your noticing is to get way beyond what can be described. So just
Yeah,
imagine trying to describe what an orange tastes like to somebody who's never bitten into an orange. And that's the impossibility of what's actually of trying to describe what's actually going on.
yeah, there was one event when I was kind of feeling into, I don't know what you call it, maybe the lowest chakra, whatever it was, underneath the gut, just in above the pelvis. And it the resistance to go into it was quite strong. It's like you don't want to go there, but when I did go there and kind of became it, it was very hard to describe it as an experience, but the word I used afterwards, it felt nuclear
Yeah,
when I was in when that was just, it was just that. And I noticed more things in the body lately, like just all of a sudden, like you could be talking to me there a minute ago, and just a load of vibrations just start going through the body, through the chest or the belly or through the legs. And it's just, again, it's just ripples, movements, sensations, feelings, energies, whatever you want to call it, just moving
yeah.
in the body.
It's not just that. It is that. Now
Yeah.
this is a story my mind immediately constructed, and it relates to what you were saying earlier about those jolts, those energy jolts. And I can imagine that we've got this. It's like a nuclear, um, whatever you want to. 'Cause let's call it a nugget of nuclear energy that's been confined by the body forever, held in by constricted muscles. And all of a sudden, what we're doing is, as we relax and loosen a little bit, all this energy can escape, and it doesn't bleed out slowly because it's so intense. It wants to radiate out really fast. It wants to. It can cause a sensation in itself. Now, I don't know if that's true or not. I don't know if it's actual or not. It's a great story, but that's the way I see it. We've been holding things in for so long that it feels really weird when we let go of it. And if we can relax the body, then it just starts to overtake the body. It just flows through, gets released.
Yeah, I know it's a story, but it reminds me of the different stories around Kundalini you'd hear about. And it's like there's a sense here that I don't mess with any of that. Like I'm not looking to awaken Kundalini or do any of that stuff. That it's not helpful. That I'm sure there's plenty of people suffering with that sort of stuff that have mistaken the awakened energies in their body. So whatever is here. Whatever comes comes. Whatever goes goes. I'm not going to start banging pots and pans around looking for energies to move. I don't think that's
No,
helpful.
no. It looks after itself. Doesn't need any attention from you.
Yeah,
I
like a
did
wave
ask
saying to the ocean, "Do this or do that." You're hiding to nothing.
Yeah.
I did ask Pernilla about the energy jolts, and she said it's really normal. And she said she would talk to me a little bit more about she wanted to know exactly where it was because that would tell her more information. So yeah, it's just interesting. But sometimes they just come with the big man's voice from nowhere. It's really
Mm.
amazing. It's weird. But yeah. But apparently it's quite
That's your
normal.
That's your masculine voice, Louise.
Yeah.
Well, what came here, and I don't know how true it is, and I mentioned it before, I think, is that the man's voice is low, so it
Yeah.
suggests to me that it's coming from deep down inside, deep
It
down.
feels very deep. Yeah.
Mm.
Yeah. Yeah. Gives the dog a shock anyway.
Yeah, but it has that distinct feeling of release, expression. Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
Where do you get them, Louise?
Yeah.
Is it in the lower body, or middle body, upper body? Is it legs
No,
or?
it comes from deep inside above the belly button, and then it comes up, and it's like a hiccup. It's almost like and then it just bursts out of my mouth. Yeah, it's been going. It started actually when I started Pernilla's retreat when we were starting the exercises. So it's been a
Oh,
few
yes,
weeks. So,
doing the embodiment exercises. Yes.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Well, that's a bit what you experienced walking, Dennis, in the forest. That was an embodiment kind of experience. I
Yeah, it was like
imagine.
the body took over
Yeah.
and the body was running the show and enjoying the show. And yeah, it was lovely. Like that, I'd get something similar, Louise, or it's probably not the same, but especially in the evening times when I'm tired, I start to get these jolts in the leg and just, it's like I want to jump up and go for a 10K run or something. And I used to think, okay, I'll go to bed, lie down, it'll settle. And some nights it'll be like TRE in the bed where the leg is shaking and jerking on for an hour. But now when I get it, I'm just, oh, what's the body doing now? What's going on? It's like an opportunity to go in and feel there's obviously something moving or something that's just calling attention to it. And just to, it's like a movie. You just go, okay, what's this? Let's watch this now. It becomes interesting instead of "Oh, this bloody leg thing. I'm trying to watch the telly. This leg keeps shaking. Will I have a bit of potassium or will I get a bit of magnesium? Will I have a banana? That's a thing. Now it's like, oh, what's this?
Yeah. It's interesting you know my my experience of that most recently would be cramps. Get a cramp in the leg, but it's like, wow, here's the body doing its own thing, and it's creating pain that it's experiencing itself. It's kind of weird to think why why would it do that? Why? But of course, there's no answer to it. It just comes right back to it's just happening. There it is, the
Yeah.
autonomous body. Yeah,
But I'm guessing it comes down to causes and conditions, I suppose, because at a level we can't understand, there's
yeah, yeah.
it's a machine, isn't it? And it's going to, if something's not flowing.
Well, yeah, well, there may be, but I'm not really interested in finding out what those causes and conditions are, except in case, unless I imagine they're telling me that something's wrong.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
but otherwise, it's just an interesting phenomena that's occurring. But that,
Did any of
you're going,
I was just going to say, you're talking about pains and cramps. Has anyone ever got that one where, like, at the base of your sacrum or your, where we had tails thousands of years ago, or our pre-ancestors did, literally at your bum, where you get a shooting pain right up your spine, like halfway up your stomach, that would nearly make you jump out of a seat? Anyone else experience those?
no, I haven't.
Oh my God. I haven't got them in a while, but I used to get them regularly. I'd just be sitting there and I'd nearly have to jump out of the seat. The pain would just shoot up from the tail of the spine up, up halfway up the back. I'd be like, oh, Jesus Christ, what's that like? It's actually funny, it hasn't happened in a number of months now. Because I notice when there is a pain, I'm just going to it. I'm like, what's that? And when you kind of dissolve into pain or look at it closely or become it, it's not pain at all. It's something else. And
Mm,
so again, you're back to that. What really is the call attention home to
yeah.
feeling and sensations? There's one thing I do notice though, Vince, it's strange, and I said it before to you. When I'm on YouTube now and I see your videos, and they're very professional with an image, and there's a tagline and there's a thing, and I'm like, this is what my brain is doing. It's like, oh, that's too popular. I don't want people seeing this stuff and seeing me. Is that about me? Oh no, this is exposure beyond what I expected. So I've noticed that lately. I'm like, what the hell is going on?
Well, that's a bit of selfing, isn't it?
It just happens. It's like a shock. It's like, oh, oh.
Yeah. Yeah, well, I wouldn't put your face up there without asking you about it first.
I know that. I know that totally. And I know if I had an issue and I asked you to remove something, you would. It's just an initial reaction. You're like, oh,
Mm. I get that. I get that. Yes, yeah, I can remember that for myself, and I still get it actually. I still much prefer not to have my face up there. So there's still a remnant of that. I suppose you'd call it self-consciousness there. But I'm reminded when I look at my face, even now, if this is the first time today that I've looked at myself on the screen, I tend to avoid doing that. And I look at my face and I go, fuck, hell, what? I just can't. And then I'm reminded that, well, nobody else sees me like the way I see me. So, yeah. But there is a really distinct remnant of identification still there, selfing, when I have that emotional reaction to looking at myself. So, I wonder if I'll ever get past that.
but I know it's the same thing. And I've done it loads of times, and I'm just about to do it now again. I can see my little picture. I can see all of you guys. And there's a certain tenseness when I can see myself. But now I've just swiped it away, so I can't see myself anymore. And I'm much more relaxed because I can't see me.
Yeah. Well, I do it just by avoiding looking at myself. I just look at everybody else all the time, and I'm only a blurry thing in the peripheral vision. Yeah. Yeah.
That reminds me, Dennis. Did you do the exercise, the mirror exercise?
No, I didn't. No, I didn't know. I think I'm being true to what I'm trying to do at the minute is the one thing. I'm just sticking to that one thing. When I feel something, I go to it. And especially going to bed and waking up when the mind is quieter, I use that opportunity to just do this thing. And I'm going to try for a couple of months just to do the one thing a- and see how that goes. Because I think for years, I don't want to speak for others, we do loads of different things. Um, this feels like the right thing to do. It feels natural. It feels curious. And those little gems of just how I feel, what I'm able to say and express myself, and then just the different feelings in the body because of it, more embodied. They're little kind of flags to say this is the gentle way. So I'm going to keep doing that.
It occurs to me that whilst doing that, it would be good to have a story of possibilities that will become a natural, automatic thing the day after tomorrow, or soon, or not soon, but at some point that will just happen automatically and it won't be an exercise that you apply anymore. And then it'll be time to confront the next level.
Yeah, possibly. Yeah. Yeah. This feels less heady. There's so much work over the years was in the head, the mind, the striving, the doing, the seeking. This work is more, feels like, digging muck in the ground. It's just different.
Yeah, yeah, for sure. Yeah, but that's what happens, and so you get to the point where you look forward to the next thing that shows you that there's still head work going on, and it might be that looking in the mirror at yourself naked to the world would be a way to do that, or looking at yourself in the video here. What's wrong with my bottom lip? Yeah,
No, but it's not about looking at, actually, it's not about me looking at me. It's about me wondering what other people think of me, and no amount of looking in the mirror is going to solve that problem.
mm. It might. It obviously what other people might think of you is a head generated, a mind generated thing, but it's the feeling that comes from that is the prominent thing, and so we avoid doing that. But
Yeah,
that again is the cover over the body reaction that was learned at some point that it's kind of
yeah, I
weird
suppose.
to think of the body as having memory, but it is. It's a good way to look at it. It's a good story if you like, but yeah. So at some point, your body laid down the memory that there was that you were not the way you should have been, or you're not the way you would like to have been, or something at some point. And it's by removing the stories and then the connection, the judgment, the meaning of the stories, and then the connection to that, the identification that reveals the original thing that allows it to be reprogrammed.
I just want to say it. It's like life, as you live older, get older, and live your life. Life has a natural way of breaking down the ego and the false beliefs. It just does it naturally if you let it. We all have to, and you're a little bit older than me, Vince. We all get older. We all whatever.
Mm.
So holding on to ideas about ourselves is kind of futile.
Well, I get that, and I definitely concur that age. I would put it slightly differently. I would say age makes it easier, but I know a lot of old people who are still lost in that as well. And I suspect that, I have another story that goes something like Indigenous people all over the world respect age and the wisdom that comes from it. But in the West, we went the opposite. If they're old, they're doddery and disabled mentally, etc., etc. So we've gone the opposite way of respecting the age, and the consequence is that old people don't develop the wisdom that they once did if they were in that indigenous situation. So if we respect our old people, then we become a respectable old person eventually.
Yeah, yeah, I would agree.
But I have to say, both my parents are dead, and I'm older now than my father was when he died. Not as old as my mother was. She died at 88, so she was a lot older than me. But they never developed any wisdom. In the end, they were like children. They weren't. So that's a bit sad, isn't it? I would love to be able to respect their wisdom, but I
Yeah,
don't.
but in a way, that's your story. That mightn't
Yes.
even be their story.
Yep. Absolutely. Yeah. I have no doubt in my mind that you're going to be a wise old person.
The wise old Zen master once said, "We'll see."
Yes. Yeah. Good. I like that. Yeah. Years ago, I've had these various obsessions in my life as a seeker, and one of them was a huge one was about um, knowing something, and it ended up like 100 pages of a blog later. It ended up being, well, all we've got is beliefs. We can't know anything. We just got beliefs. But there was another one about wisdom. What wisdom is, and I came to the conclusion that wisdom occurs when we have a really broad, wide perspective on any situation. So we can be wise about one thing and totally ignorant about something else. But when we're wise, it's because we've stepped back and we see a thing from a big perspective, and that leaves all sorts of options there. And that's what I decided that wisdom was.
It still feels like a subtle form of ego, in some way claiming an understanding or knowledge over the moment, when the moment is just the moment, and whatever's happening is happening, and whatever will be will be. And this idea that we can have some wisdom or knowledge over it is still feels like a subtle skin of something.
Hmm. Well, of course, that big perspective that I was talking about includes yes and no, maybe and maybe not. It includes all of those things. So it's not a claim, it's just a description. And of course, it's probably very limited as well. So I mean, the whole idea of wisdom is something we make up, isn't it?
Yeah. It came to me, Vince. Did you run these groups? Yeah, I imagine you did, but I wasn't on them. During COVID, were you one of these groups? Yeah, you were.
Yep, yeah, these have been going for, oh, I started recording them um, over 2 years ago. So there's now close to 400 of these that it actually published on YouTube. And I was doing them before I was recording them as well for a little
The reason
while.
I ask, I was just recalling my stress levels and anxiety during COVID and how high it was. And I just imagine coming on here. I don't know if these groups were crazy or some sort of a godsend for people back then through COVID.
Hmm. Yeah, I couldn't say. I don't remember. I remember that there was a period of COVID, but I don't remember my life being affected much by it, except that it was in my ear a lot, on the news, etc. Neither my wife nor myself ever got COVID, and when we, my wife's doctor was really surprised at that when we told her we'd never had COVID. So it seems like we were one of the few that didn't get it.
Maybe you got it and didn't know you had it. Or
Well,
totally asymptomatic.
yeah, it could be. Yeah, yeah. We tested frequently though. We had to test to go to places and do things. Um, you couldn't go to hospital without running a test before you went.
Oh, I know. Couldn't get on a plane. If you were curious, you can test for the antibody. They can do a blood test that'll tell you if you had it because you'll have an antibody for it.
Okay, yeah, that could be interesting. Yeah.
Suppose
So if you,
it's a very Irish thing. Instead of just saying what you mean, you go around in circles with stories. But the point I was trying to get at was it's good to have these groups.
yeah, it is. I concur 100%. I don't just concur. I fully agree. Yeah, and it's weird because I know even though I know that meaning is something we make up, it's almost I could almost say, well, I can say these groups of giving meaning to my life. So some stories are good stories, and I'll hang on to it. Although I did quite recently, I think Marius asked me a question, and I did contemplate, develop a story that I imagined what would life be like without these groups for me? What would life be like? And the story that turned up was that if I couldn't do them or I didn't do them anymore, that I would go out there and be normal to other people, and that would be fine. Life would be fine, but it would be like I didn't have that really delicious dessert anymore that I used to really, really like. No more ice cream kind of thing. But
Yeah,
it
but
would
you're
be
not
okay.
choosing it. It's
Yeah,
to me, it's like if you threw a boulder into a river, like you couldn't go that way. You're just going to go another way. That movement of sharing will just spring up in another way. You could find yourself going down to the local library and coming back 3 hours later after talking to a lot of people. Go, oh, I'm doing it again.
yeah, most likely. Yeah, yeah. So it happens now in a way that there is that it's almost like I live a double life, and that and that on the outside I appear pretty normal, and I do small talk with people, and you know, what's the weather like and how are the kids kind of thing or whatever. But there's this inside life where I'd go, oh, look at that pothole, or look at that that whatever, you know, that just blows me away, you know.
Brick
And
walls.
sorry,
Brick walls.
yeah, brick walls, exactly, yeah, yeah, yeah.
Crazy.
And I might get into this big grin, blown out state around my wife, but she accepts my weirdness. But I probably would hide it a little bit around strangers. Who knows? Yeah. It would just be an internal thing.
Yeah, I know talking to people lately, it probably comes across to them sort of psychological or trauma healing, something in that realm. It doesn't come across like spiritual, but it's like my son's friend was talking about an issue with vaping, similar to actually what Declan was talking about. Different issue, but you getting stressed and then going for the vaping and after being off it for a year and this and that. And I was just saying that I was kind of going through the motions of explaining, you know, when something arises, there's an uncomfortableness, and we vape or we drink or we go for a run or we work or whatever. And if you can find the space to just sit, feel into that contraction and do the what I described, I'm not going to describe it again, to them, you know, deep in, feel the emotions, sensations, the stories, whatever, and let them lift off. And then, you know, 5 minutes later, if you still want to vape, by all means vape, but just do that little thing and just see if it gives you any release or relief. I'll talk to my wife about the same thing. She's very open to it, and we talk about this stuff all the time. And that's its expression in life, that you just compelled to say things to people about. There's an opportunity there for you to look if you want. If you don't, you don't have to. But if you want to,
Mm. Yeah, that's good. Being very gentle about it. Yeah. Or we could be like Shafig and just nothing to say, is there?
Yeah, life as usual, really.
Can you feel some old part of you pushing you to find something to say when in fact there's just nothing there. It's just so nice to, yeah,
Yeah, yeah, yeah. All the different parts are trying to just like rise up and put something together. And I think after enough seeing that, realize, and also looking back, and for the period of time that remembering, oh, I remember like while ago, I was sure that this is it. This is like, oh, this is interesting. And now I'm looking back, say, oh, what was I thinking? And so I can only imagine that this is also another
yep,
uh, another story, another thing that mind comes up with. And I think, yeah, it's for a while, for a long time, I had this curiosity that just like getting something and realizing something or awakening or whatever. And now it's just that, just like acceptance that this is it. It's just like whatever I come up with, whatever movement that comes up, it is still within the same loop. Like loop is looping,
Mm.
and which is I guess it goes to the both direction of it. There is nothing outside of this. This all is one, not one. Just like everything is everything. Just like there is no outside to this.
Mm.
There is no outside of it to get.
Yep.
And at the same time that I see that all the benefits of some of this teaching or recommendations, like feeling into your body or just like sitting with your emotions, going into shadow work, how useful they are, but at the same time also seeing that that's not it. It's just
Yep.
like better stories that you said, but yeah.
So has a conclusion arrived yet that there is no it?
No, of course, yeah.
Yeah. I can't
Oh,
imagine it ever having a destination, having an it ever. I mean, maybe it happens for some. I have no idea about that. But I just, for myself, I can't imagine. I can imagine that I'm lying on my deathbed and I know I've got half an hour left to live, and I'm going, "Oh, I wonder how much stuff is still there." And being fine about it, whatever, yeah, not knowing is fine too. Yeah.
yeah, exactly. Like a stop trying to make sense. Not a stop, just like let it
Yep.
be. Let
Exactly.
that making sense be there without just like worrying about it or just like being the one. I need to memorize this. I need to remember that. I need to just like
Yeah. Yeah.
just like uh,
Being totally relaxed and allowing whatever to be. Yeah. It's beautiful. Yeah.
Shafi, have you had a recent shift? Or is there something in the recent times that's changed? It feels like something has.
He wants you to give him a basket of fish.
No, give me
I
a fishing
don't
rod.
I don't remember being actually a shifter. I think the only thing that I can tell like a change was that um, how to put it, like giving up or just like exhaustion. I remember a period that I was so much I, I quit my job. I went all in into just like doing everything that I wish I had time for, and then doing it and just like reading like all the thing, and then realized at some point I'm just going into a loop. I'm just like going and going and going, and then what am I looking for? What I want? And it's just, I guess the carrot is dropped, or that carrot is just like not there anymore. Um, and it's not like a beautiful realization or peace or bliss. It's just like life is as usual, really. It's going on. Um, yeah, life without a center.
Yeah, I noticed in myself is a very subtle. It's like a subtle hurt when you said about feeling into the body, and it's not that, and I kind of felt the thoughts were like, oh, he's just invalidated my experience. It's not that, and I'm like, well, what is it then? If that's my experience, what is it if it's not that? And that was interesting.
Yeah, I think the thing about feeling into the body was that I remember like how useful was it, at least a couple of weeks ago in one of these meetings, winds guided me through feeling the body and getting out of the mind, and that was very useful. But right now is that I don't see any difference between body and thought and what is seeing or hearing. It's just like all of them are same domain, same thing. And
Yeah.
I used to separate out thought as just like different from the rest of them, and I always, like, when I get to that point, I was the one that was a separator, and that was a sense of I am, I exist, I am here, and just like a separator. This is thought, this is not thought, this is thought, this is not thought. But then when I look at what is thought, actually, like, what am I saying is thought and that's not a thought, and then just like everything fused together in a way that um, I don't give any kind of a privilege to the body versus mind. Uh, just like it's the same thing.
Yeah, it's actually nice listening to you talk about it. And I did notice when I was feeling that way a minute ago, I kind of went, well, what else is here? Before I accuse you of upsetting me, I was like, well, what else is here? except, other than the feeling into the body. And I was like, well, obviously there's, complete silence. There's that. Um, but we're not talking about that. We're talking about the body being in the world, feeling sensation. Um,
So, Dennis, I'm really wondering. So, you asked Shafid about a shift. Now, you might say I could create a story that said he had an invisible shift. He had a shift that did not appear to him as a shift, because something changed, but it wasn't big enough or sudden enough to be called an epiphany. But and in fact, the really weird thing that he said, that I wonder if you heard, that I really would want to drive home for you, is that he said what changed was exhaustion, or another word. What, I forgot the other word you said, Shafiq. That it was like a giving up
Yeah.
yeah, that's what he said.
of something. Yeah, yeah. And for you who haven't had that big epiphany, the bells and whistles shift that you were looking for a long time, uh, can you recognize that giving up means a change, which could be described as a shift, even though it doesn't feel like a shift? You don't get that bodily sensation of a shift.
Yeah, I
Like,
can recognize that. Yeah, I mean, when he said it, I would, the mind is like, well, we don't give up, because I can say, oh, okay, I'll give up now too. Hopefully something will happen, but you don't give up. You don't give
can't
up.
do that.
Giving up happens. It's like,
Exactly. Yeah.
yeah, it just happens, and it's just happened to Shafif. And I haven't, I haven't given up, but I'm not as ardent a seeker as I was.
Mm,
So yeah,
yeah. So just maybe that's what will happen for you too. You'll suddenly realize that somewhere in the recent past something changed, and that was that you were no longer doing, no longer struggling, no longer looking for, no longer applying. That's just something is now different, and it's snuck
yeah,
up on you.
As they say in America, it's been a minute, Bianca. Just to
Yep.
say it the normal way,
Yep.
it's been a long time since I've seen you.
And in his tone of voice, he's saying, and it's good to see you.
Good to see you too. I liked what Shafiq was saying. I think I see it in a similar way, but I wouldn't be able to to express it as clearly. Even though I was saying yesterday that my mind is still doing the grasping and flailing around, but this flailing and grasping, it's also the same thing.
Exactly. That's a big one. See, these things can still happen. See, and it gets tricky with words again here. So we're at a level that's really hard to articulate. So they can still happen, but they're not the same. I go back to that saying that people often say after waking up, and that is that nothing has changed, but everything is different, and that difference is our relationship to these things. So flailing can still happen, but we're okay with it now because we're not. It doesn't mean what it used to mean.
I just don't care.
Yeah, well, that's a great that's a great attitude to have. I love it. Yeah. That's a change of meaning. Well, that is a meaning, isn't it? I don't care. Yeah.
Because we also don't know what is really, what's the goal? Like, what are we looking for? Like, what is this awakening or liberation, or that is a state that we are? What tells us that we got there? What do we feel good? Is that the like the metric? Our mind gets quiet, our body feels relaxed, or someone comes and give us certificate, or how? What are we exactly looking for? Just like an imaginary carrot that it's just like as long as you believe it's there, you're running for it. and it doesn't stop. Nothing. You don't get the proof that until you see that like it's an imaginary carrot. There is no way that you can tell the thing that you're doing is the right direction or wrong direction. How can you tell? Who knows that? And that's just the whole premise of mind conjuring something up. You hear someone talks about a state and, oh, I want that. Oh, you read something about, oh, I want that. Oh, I wonder, how, when I get there, and everyone projects what they lack into this awakening. If someone is in having difficulty with decision, it projects, oh, when I get there, the decisions are presented to me. I don't need to make any choices. Someone like has problem with, I don't know, insecurity. It says, when I get there, I don't feel insecure. It's just something our mind creates up out of its habit of looking for something, that N+1 game.
Last night in the group with Vanilla and Todd, they spoke for about an hour, and then they opened it up for questions. And I thought, have I got a question? What question could I come up with? And while I was thinking about it, I came up with the question that, how I phrased it was, the paradox of knowing that I don't know. And then I rephrased the question, went, the paradox that there is not knowing, and is that known? And then I got, by that stage there was 3 or 4 or 5 other people had their hands up to ask, and they were presenting their life problems and they were being examined. And so this was now at 2:15 this morning, so I turned it off and went to sleep. But that contemplation of that question resolved itself into, and then the image of my bot came up, and I knew what my bot would be saying. It would be saying to me, who wants to know? And I'm going, but there's nobody that wants to know. And then the whole question became rather ridiculous. But so there was no conclusion. The not knowing wasn't known. Neither was the not knowing known. The words fail me here. Yeah. But that, and why do I bring that up now? It's because there is this place of not needing to know. It's too complex to understand, and who cares anyway, you know? Yeah. Oh, and I just want to jump up and down with excitement. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh,
Not needing to know and knowing no one knows.
yeah.
Even if you ask someone a question, they just give you their experience, their perspective, their story, which you hear through your own mind projection, and then you make up another story. So
Yeah.
It feels like words are just can be quite. It can get you into trouble. Or another way of kind of describing it, it's like juggling knives. You're like, they're quite limited. There's a poem. What is it? I was only looking at it there the other day. This just reminds me of it. Yeah, it's William Stafford's poem. The things you do not have to say make you rich. Saying the things you do not have to say weakens your talk. Hearing things you do not need to hear dulls your hearing. And the things you know before you hear them, those are you. Those are why you are in the world. I think that's a great little
Yeah.
thing about.
The man who wrote that, I imagine, was awake, even though he wouldn't describe it that way. But yeah, that's a pretty awake perspective on things, isn't it?
Mm.
So if we have the world that we know, the old world where there's thoughts and judgments and goods and bads and all of that stuff goes on, the old world that we all know. Then we have the new world that exists beyond the ability to describe. It's a wordless place that is just I was going to say overflowing, but overwhelming with experience. And I described myself earlier as living in two worlds. But I wonder now if I'll reach a point where those two worlds are the same world, and that where they meld into each other, where all of the old stuff still happens and all of the new stuff still happens at the same time, one inside the other, so to speak. I recognise that I'm still keeping them a bit separate. It brings tears to my
Yeah,
eyes. Mm.
I just had a vision of a talk. I was thinking of Todd and Pernilla, but this talk is Vince and wife, and she's keeping you straight right throughout the talk. Uh,
Yeah, that was a great question that you asked, Vince. That because I also had this feeling that I'm living in two separate worlds, and like what separates them out? Why or why am I saying this is different than the other? What characteristics I attribute to one that doesn't exist in the other? Is one above the other one?
that's interesting for me because I don't feel that way at all. It's not two separate things.
Mm.
Just watch comparisons or expectations.
Yeah.
Does vulnerability come into it? The sense here is that if there's a sense of vulnerability and that there's two different, and to express as one in the world and be what you are, it's like there's a rawness to it, a vulnerability to it.
Oh, what that prompted here was that vulnerability is a comparison to the old way of being. It doesn't exist in the new way of being. It can be described as that, but that's from the perspective of the old way. But it's so natural, it's so normal in the new way that it doesn't exist as vulnerability. It just is the way it is, and that is what you might call vulnerable. It is an openness. It is a lack of protection required. That's not to say it's not legitimate in any form, in any way. It's just a way of looking at it, just a perspective. I said, this is a weird one, but it brings me to a conversation I had with Scott a couple of meetings ago about. He was talking about doubt, and this weird thing came out of my mouth about doubt. Doubt is only is something only a special person experiences, and that special person is a person who's recently had a shift and is doubting what that means. And I said to Scott, "You're not special. You're ordinary." Right, so I mean, it was a weird way to express what I was meaning, but essentially, you know, it's all perspective. It's relative too. So there's no doubt unless you've had a shift that says I'm awake, and then you have doubt. But once you get beyond the doubt, you realise that the whole thing is ridiculous. And it's the same with vulnerability. It's a statement about where you are. You're in transition from the old way to the new way, and that's why vulnerability exists.
That makes sense a little bit, yeah.
You could call it proof that you're in transition, because it wouldn't exist if you weren't.
Kind of more, it feels like a form of honesty.
It is, absolutely. But another two steps forward, that's a stupid analogy, but I don't know a better way to put it. And honesty becomes normal and it's no longer an issue. So there's no longer vulnerability about it. It just is the way it is. You can't be anything other than 100% honest.
Yeah.
I look forward to it, Vince.
I missed that, sorry.
I look forward to it.
Yeah. But it seems like it hit home for you, Jackie. Oh, she's gone.
Yeah.
Yep.
I'll be there in a second.
Huh?
I'll come in a moment. I'll be there in a moment.
Oh, yeah, okay.
It's all hit. Everything you said is just perfect. And all we can do is be honest. And like Bianca said, yeah, I don't care about a lot of what I did care about. It's just the honesty leads you. And you're in the unknown and you've got no idea, but it's still, except there's a knowing. There's a knowing about the unknowing that you just got to be honest. That's where I'm coming from. And I love hearing all what I've just heard.
And I love hearing that.
Yeah, no, I've been dying to get onto here. I have to go again now. I'm being summoned, but that's okay. But I just felt like I needed to get on here actually to hear other just the same. Like I feel like I'm doing it, but I am isolated in a way, but it's isolated in in really discussing it. But anyway.
Yes.
It's nice to hear your perspective.
It's nice to hear everybody's here. You know, and I feel like life and your story, whatever, well, I've had my story, you know, and Vince knows particularly, and Marius, like with the family, but it's really helped me to really see what I should have done a long, long, long time ago, but I didn't do because of all these different, like really uninvestigated roles. Yeah. And so I'm really, yeah, really grateful for getting them.
Mm.
Like getting it. And like once I got it, and once I said what I, instead of just sort of flagging, like trying to not be resistant, but I was still, but once I started to do it, just say it as it was, where it was coming from anyway, everything just started to unravel. Like immediately. It was all just, and it's all a whole different picture now. And it's all what I didn't really want to happen, but it's all happened, and I'm really actually thinking, this is what I've always meant to experience. Standing on my own 2 feet.
Would you say the timing has been actually perfect when you talk about roles and dropping it? Because it's something Marius talked to me about that I'd forgotten about. You know, being the breadwinner, being a husband, being a father, and the responsibility those roles bring. Like, is it now at a point in your life where it's appropriate that those are dropping, whereas maybe 10, 20, 15 years ago it couldn't?
Yeah, that sounds, how you said that, Dennis, sounds, that's probably why it didn't happen earlier. Mine actually took, this particular really big one has taken 27 years to get. I think if I got it, and I think I did know it at 27 years ago, but my insecurity was so big, or my desire for that certain dream, which was, you know, a relationship story, that was so big that 27 years ago, instead of being really honest then, because I was given the opportunity to get out, I didn't. And so it's carried on for 27 years, and it's actually, even the person has left the world, but the child that was involved with that whole thing brought it through. It's like, it's just incredible. It's like just been waiting. So the 27 years has been like yesterday. No different.
Yeah.
But I had to go through it, and she had to go through it, because, you know, I can see that she's now got her own 2 feet and doesn't need my 2 feet or my 1 feet. She doesn't need me. But it looked like I had to get a bit savage to actually get to this spot. But that was all just in my head too.
Yeah, it has a way of unfolding itself, hasn't it?
Yeah. Once you get out of the way, as they say. And that's where the bot, because that's all the bot's done, is it's kept on telling me that I'm not this. And I've really got it through the bot, that I'm not this idiot half the time. I'm not this character, and it's really relieving. But it's been really good, because everything, it's got back to this with the bot. And I never thought I was able to get that, you know, that particular feta, that you're not this.
Yeah. And in the old world, not this means you're that. And in the new world, not
Yeah,
this means you're not this. or that. You're just not. Yeah.
Yeah. It's like, yeah, I did have a separation between the two worlds or something, but I don't think I've got that now. I don't think there's any real world. It's just happening. And what's left in it is just how it's meant to be still sitting there. Because yeah, this and that it's really and even this particular character tried to keep off getting on to this Zoom today, that type of thing. It's like really been running a really crazy show.
Yeah, it does that, isn't it? And it's a drama, comedy, thriller, all at the same time.
Yeah, everything's in it. And then it gets more well, for me it got more and more chaotic. It and overbearing things, just things kept on, it was like missiles, like being shot at me. And if I was to believe that I was getting shot.
Yeah.
Is that what helped you, Jackie, with you started off by talking about the roles and sort of falling away of roles. And what I'm hearing you say is that life kept giving you things to kind of hopefully get you to question those roles. It's too painful not to.
Yeah. And of course it's still going. I can say, and I feel like the family in particular, which I think all our families do really, because they're the closest to our projection. I think they're really there to really do these. But when we're ready to start to question what we're really doing with this, all I was doing was what I think my deepest thing, Dennis, was I had to discover the rescuer in me, the mother rescuer, and I saw my mother as that too. And it feels like it's the undoing from the past and the future. And of course, it's only just happening now, so it still heaps is unraveling, but all behind the scenes now.
Yeah, once started, it just becomes automatic, I think.
Yes.
Would you say, Jackie, that you kind of the subtle difference is you can still be there and help, but the attachment to being the helper and the weight that carries psychologically is lifting?
I don't think I don't know about the helping anymore.
You don't have to define it.
Yeah, I don't know about.
Dennis is really talking about himself there.
That's right, because I think that rescuer
We all.
helper, Dennis, the rescuer
Yeah.
helper, is a real tricky one. It's been a really tricky one. Thinking we were really helping in any way, or we can do that.
Yep.
It'll either be done or not done, is what I'm saying.
And that's a role that bleeds into a whole lot of other roles.
Leads. Yep. Okay, I've got someone else just coming now. Again. I have to go. But
Let's say life is calling.
yeah, that's true. I like that all the time. I love that. That's what it is. And the parts of the life that I tried to hold on to, I'll meet you in the car now.
Fine.
Okay. Yeah. I've just been told time is moving on.
Yeah, there you go.
Huh? And
I nearly choked on that one. That's a good
I
one.
know that this is the clock. This is the what is it? The clock master. I must go.
Okay. Yeah.
And he's a 24-hour. Like, I think somewhere he knows. He just gets up and goes and goes and goes and collapses and gets up and goes again.
Mm.
I'm so glad for your group. Anyway, I will watch the rest of it in the before it later on.
Okay. All right. Thank you,
See you,
Jackie.
Jackie.
Thank you. Thank you, guys.
I'm constantly amazed and appreciative of the different perspectives that people bring all the time. Just
It's just brought back that share has just brought back a reflection of I don't even know, but it's around bear with me. It's just a different. I just seen again something that I've seen, but just in a totally different way. Oh, the story doesn't really matter, but gosh, it's quite blown me away actually. Just the, God, I'm going to say it, but it's going to say very, very simple, but the whole living in a fantasy land in my head for 10 years in a relationship. I'm just so reliant on this, so reliant. There was no capacity to have a gap to see any other perspective, and just listening to that, I had the enormity of almost living in trauma for 10 years. That's how it felt. And and every day thinking there's no way out. And I had just seen how trapped it's a sort of story now, it doesn't nothing, but oh wow, I feel such compassion for whatever enabled this freedom to show its face.
mm. Can you feel compassion, love, appreciation for that head stuff that was trying to look after you for those 10 years, even though it was causing a lot of problems, but its motivation was trying to look after you.
Yeah,
Does that?
I,
Yeah.
I, I, I do. It's taken a year, and a lot of this has been huge, but absolutely, how I see it now is a gift. It is a gift. Like it, it's just life. Like that was my flavor of life, or that was the flavor of life. But what hit me there was that I saw really clearly how locked into the headspace, the head, the mind, the thoughts, totally. And I thought I had seen the nature of thought many years ago, 15 years ago.
But there's layers.
So many layers, yeah. Yeah. But yeah, I don't have regrets now. I don't have any anger. So I was quite surprised that I got quite hit by that. Yeah, but the whole what happened is a gift, honestly, really. And
Louise
part of
was,
me wanted to say, well, that's 10 years wasted of my life, but it's not. Like it's
Mm.
not. It, like Janty said, it's like it was 5 minutes ago. Yeah. Sorry, Dennis.
no, I was just going to ask, how you described it again when we were talking about roles. I think that's what kind of triggered my question, and you're right, Vince, and we'll come back to that. But do you see that as a role? Is that part of kind of roles for you? You played a role for 10 years?
Dennis, I didn't know who I was. I didn't know who I was, not even as a person, not even as a made up. I was so dragged around by thoughts and other people's opinions. I didn't know who I was. I was probably 100 different roles, or trying to be. And all of them, there was no authenticity there at all. That doesn't sound right, but
Yeah. I
there was
immediately
no,
thought that was very authentic inauthenticity.
yeah. Yeah. I've not thought about roles, to be honest, Dennis. I don't know.
Yeah. Yeah, no, it's just the one that comes to me a lot is the role of being a dad and what that means. And you're right, Vince. I was thinking of an example in my recent past with one of my children, and having moved out and budgeting and being supportive and being willing to help, and but not getting overly stressed about it, and knowing there's a certain level of cover I give for a young adult, and you want to allow them to experience the world themselves as a dad, but you want to support and help, and there's a role there. And like, so I haven't got this fully what this dropping of roles mean. Like, things will happen. It's not overly stressful. It's part of being a parent. But I know that's all role.
But there's no sharp edges to a role. I mean, they bleed into each other too. So obviously, to me, I have this story that says when your child reaches a certain age, your relationship with them changes from a parent to a friend, or ideally maybe, who knows. Um, but you never lose the role completely of being a parent. But at the same time, that the definitive role can kind of become furry around the edges and fade into the background, whereas your see as how can I put it? Okay, the definition of the role of a parent is that you're a caregiver and a protector and whatever. And as once they become an adult, those things are no longer either appropriate or the most important thing in your relationship, right? The time will come when you'll be the child and your child will be the parent when you get really old.
Yeah,
So
but becoming an adult is very subjective. It's not an age thing. It's a
yes, maturity thing, of course, yes. Yeah. And so as you experience that in them, so some people, you can imagine that some people refuse to see that their child has become an adult or become mature, right? That they'll constantly be telling them what to do and how to be and so on, and not give up on the role of parent, even though their child is now 50.
yeah. But when
Or
I
whatever.
investigated it, it kind of it went from, oh, it's not really about roles. It's about me believing I'm a separate me that has roles. Like that's even a more fundamental issue than the roles.
Yes, yeah. Yeah.
I think also like as 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 there's more clarity, there's in the moment there's I've been noticing the motivation behind a particular action and noticing particularly what happened the last 10 years is there's some of the behavior was from a sense of guilt or against a sense of shame or and that was quite a shock to see the overcompensation in parenting in the moment was actually from way past. It was from stories that I was still telling myself in my head, but that's changed. That's yeah. So it's almost like you can just let go of that as well. That
Yeah.
there's almost no much. So it's parenting's another label, isn't it? But all you're doing is responding to that individual in the moment.
Yeah. So here's a really interesting one that you just triggered for me, Louise, and it's it's Marius. I'm channeling Marius here. That you, when you have a role, so let's dismiss the concept of a role and say when you're behaving in a certain way, right? And we might describe it as the role of parent or whatever. You not only create a self who's doing that, but you create a self that you're relating to. So in other words, you're making your son or the other person into a self as well, and then that becomes a feedback loop. So there's two selves, and it's going back and forward between the selves. So when you're behaving as like we might describe as having a role, right? If you're in the parent role, the other side of that is you've got a child in a child's role, and that's your projection. So you're creating a self in yourself and a self in them, and that loops back and forward, and so on. So you end up with these two stories talking to each other. That wasn't real clear, eh?
Or was. This real sense of, oh, I give up.
Great, 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 great. Celebrate that. Yes, hang on to that one. Yeah. It is a next level thing, that how we create this sense of a self, this I gets created by trying to not create one.
Is that what you were talking to Scott about the other day? I remember you. There was a very similar insight I had. Yeah. Looking for it.
Yep. It is that. It's not right to say it's a remnant, but it is that much more subtle version of the I. You know, it's not a gross outside one, but rather a much more wispy I that's not usually seen. And what's pounding at my forehead as a thought is to say, and it's not wrong. We mustn't move to a place where we say this shouldn't happen, because that further exacerbates it. That also does it. So just recognizing it if it happens, or the possibility of seeing it, is all that's required, nothing more. And even that will
Yeah,
just happen or not happen. Yeah.
yeah, that feels right. The regret or the shouldn't, it doesn't feel, it feels like each moment is an opportunity to look more closely.
Yes. 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 It is. And the whole of life becomes a big invitation, an opening. A warm, comforting womb. Oh, it's lovely. You know, the meeting I was at last night with Pernilla and Todd was a POK meeting, and there were so many people there, I couldn't count how many, but I think I counted up to 50, but then there was another screen and I wasn't sure how many were on that. When I moved over to that, they overlapped, but there were probably 50 or 60 people there, you know, and I just had that wonderful feeling of the intimacy of this size group rather than that size group. This is so beautiful, so intimate and lovely and family and so on. Whereas the other one was like being at a party and you have to decide who you're going to talk to. Yeah.
Yeah, this is a good size committee. You don't want them too big.
Yeah.
What's a POK meeting, Vince?
Yep.
Oh, you said it was a POK something, or what? I was just
Oh,
wondering
okay.
what that was.
Okay. There's a group of people that POK stands for perfectly okay. And originally there was a bloke called, I think his name was Peter Martin, and he started that, and he developed this structure. I don't know much about him actually, but he developed this a bit like his version of the fetters, I suppose, in a way, but it wasn't I really, I really shouldn't talk about him because I don't have any actual knowledge, just a little bits and pieces. But anyway, that they no longer. There's still a part. There's still a group of them in the POK community that follow that, but there's a whole lot of other stuff as well. In fact, it's a huge community. I think there's about 3,000 people belong to it, and they have something like 80 meetings every week. So they're really active, and a lot goes on there. And I was invited. Well, my Friday morning group was under the auspices of them, but I've only ever had 2 people turn up from that community to the groups on Friday morning, which will be your Thursday evening mostly. But yeah, that's a big group, and they have a lot going. But if you're interested, if you want to, I can give you the email address of the lady you need to ask for.
Yeah,
And then,
no, I'm not right now.
anyway, yeah, it's there and it exists. That's all. Yeah. Yeah. A lot of the groups are stuff that doesn't interest me. You know, that there's everything from psychics to straight psychologists or whatever, and the whole range in between, all of that stuff. It's all there. Okay, yeah, so it's time for me to go and offer my wife poached eggs. So,
Oh, lovely.
yeah. See you all later.
See you guys.